Yep. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the open session at 7 o'clock. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could remain standing for a moment of silence as we remember Dawn Jakes, teacher at Washington Oak Elementary School, and Herb Pimentel, custodian at Coventry High School, both of whom passed away this past week. You may be seated. And Mr. Levis, if you could notify the public of the emergency exits, please.
So the emergency exits behind you. In case of emergency, just exit either the doors and to the left or right to the exterior of the building.
Thank you. And Mr. Flora, if you could honor us with reading the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Coventry Public Schools, with community partnerships, educate, inspire, and motivate students to be lifelong learners.
Thank you. And just to notify the public, there was an executive session of the school committee previous to this meeting at 10 minutes of 7, and we considered and we approved the minutes of our executive session on 6/20/19. That was a vote, and it was unanimous, 5-0. That being said, is there a vote to seal the minutes of our executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the records of the executive session be sealed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries 5-0. Moving on to approval of our open meetings minutes, which were in our packet. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the open meeting of June 20th, 2019 as presented/amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions or concerns from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item number 6, personnel. I believe we have some resignations. Mr. Levis, did you want to speak to any of these certified resignations?
Just want to thank people, thank them for their service to Coventry.
Okay, thank you. Was there a motion to approve the resignation of Christopher Lytle?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Christopher Lytle, English teacher at Coventry High School, is effective July 11, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Jill Royer. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Jill Royer, English teacher at Coventry High School, effective June 11, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Jenna Richards. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Jenna Richards, math teacher at Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School, effective July 11, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Gina Therian. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Gina Therian, inclusion teacher at Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School, effective July 11, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to certified leaves of absence. Mr. Levis, did you want to speak to any of these? Okay, is there a motion to approve the leave of absence for Keith Klein?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the leave of absence without pay for Keith Klein, .8, occupational therapist for the district for the 2019-2020 school year.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Roseanne Cubelis-Pina.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the leave of absence for Roseanne Cabellas-Pina, Italian teacher at Coventry High School from approximately September 20th, 2019 through November 1st, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to certified recalls. Is there a motion to recall the 14 certified staff as listed on the recall list for the 2019-20 school year.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to recall 14 certified staff as listed on the recall list for the 2019-2020 school year.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to certified appointments. Mr. Levis, did you want to speak to any of these before we move on, or?
Just, sorry, I keep forgetting to turn this on. If any of the individuals are here after they're appointed, if they would stand up and be recognized.
Okay, thank you. So the first one, Kara DiNuccio.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Karen DiNuccio, regular .6 English teacher at Coventry High School, effective for the 2019-2020 school year.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Kayla Verfal.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Kayla Vavali, regular 1.0 pre-kindergarten special education teacher at Washington Oak Elementary School, effective 2019-2020 school year.
Second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. And finally, Megan Comforti. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to confirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Megan Comforti, regular 1.0 math teacher, grades 6 to 7, at Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving, were any of them here? Oh, hey,
Yay.
congratulations. Welcome.
Can you guys just introduce yourself so we? Hey, Megan. Welcome. Welcome, Kayla.
Welcome, Prevail. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did I butcher your name? Sorry.
Yeah, me too.
I think we both did.
Yeah, we both did.
Sorry.
You got
You're
it.
not
I
French.
don't know.
It took me a year to remember Sarah's last name.
You still can't
I'm
pronounce
I
it.
still
And
can't
you-
pronounce it correctly.
Like saying it's another.
And I think you're still confused with the Washington Oak principal.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
Craig set me straight on that.
Moving on to classified appointments. Any comments, Mr. Levis? All right. Is there a motion to appoint Glenna Cloutier?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Glenna Cloutier, 6.5-hour day, interview only, teacher assistant, intensive support life skills at Coventry High School, effective 2019-2020 school year.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Thomas Bobeck. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Thomas Bobeck, behavior interventionist for the district, effective 2019-2020 school year.
Second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Don Katie. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Dawn Katie, 6.5-hour/day, interview only, teacher assistant intensive support at Strive at Weston Coventry Elementary School, effective 2019-2020 school year.
Second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to Carrie Locklade. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Kerry Locklade, 6.5-hour day, interview only, teacher assistant, intensive support at the Strive program at Weston Coventry Elementary School, effective 2/19 to 2/20.
Second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries 5-0. I believe we have one more. Is there a motion to appoint Jackie Barnes?
And Sarah Seeley?
You forgot
Did I miss her?
Tara
I'm
Seeley.
sorry. Whoops.
That's okay.
Is there a motion for Tara Seepy?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Tara Seepy, 4-hour day, interview only, teacher assistant, intensive support at Strive at Western Coventry Elementary School, effective 2020 school year.
Second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. And finally, Jackie Barnes, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Jackie Bonds, 7-hour day, confidential accounting clerk at Fiscal Plant, effective July 19th, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to the public agenda, and the following agenda items are open to the public. If any votes are taken before the vote is actually called, after the motion, the public will be allowed to comment before the committee takes the vote. That being said, I think we're going on to 7, discussion and approval of contracting with Rhode Island Student Assistance Services. Mr. Leps?
Sure. First, I'd like to introduce Ms. Sarah Dinklage. Sarah is the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Student Assistance Services. And if anybody has any questions, Mrs. Dinklage is here to answer those. I just want to thank her up front first. She had reached out to me and notified me that there was some funds available for us to receive a student assistance counselor, at least for a year, potentially funding for half of the position for the second year. And again, that depends on the funding that's available for the second year, and then our ability to secure the funds, which would be about $28,000. When she reached out to me, the first thing I did was explore. I know we've had a student assistance counselor in the past, and everybody that I spoke with said that the services were phenomenal. They were part of the team. There are people in our audience that I spoke with, and our educators and administrators, and so this is aligned with what we've been doing around in terms of substance use, our 7 Challenges program, our grant that we received from the Rhode Island Foundation around trauma-informed care. I mentioned to the committee, I don't know if I mentioned the public, we received a couple of mini grants from the Kent County Prevention Coalition in Buda for actually having a recovery lunch at our high school in an intergenerational mentoring program for our middle school. But this is aligned, and again, it's a person that'll be part of our team, and I think it's a great opportunity for us. One of the and I had mentioned this before. One of the stipulations is we have to agree to do the Rhode Island student survey, and that's not the survey that we rejected this year. That was a different survey, and we had mentioned before there was no. When we had talked about 2 years ago. There was a group of superintendents, and I was included with that. Most of those superintendents, Mr. Ritchie in Charahoe, and I've spoken to Mr. Anderson, and I've spoken to Buda themselves in terms of the survey. I'll still bring that survey before you when it comes out, but I think it's a much friendlier survey. There's an opt-out. And I think the trade-off, again, for us is that we get this position for our students, for our families, they'll be part of a team. Ms. Maycumber and I met with Ms. Dinklage. So I would strongly suggest that we do this. It's a great opportunity for our community. Again, like I said, you have all the information in your packet, but if you have any questions for Ms. Dinklage, please feel free. But I would strongly suggest that we go forward with this. And I'm hoping that we can find additional grant funds, if it's available through the federal and the state government, the second year, to continue this. I think it'll, again, be a great support to our students, to our faculty, our families.
I only had one question,
Go.
And that was, I know the person will be working for a private, I assume for RISAS. So do you have someone in mind already, or would we help with that process? Or not we, but editorial we, in selecting the person?
Just click the button right there. You go.
We do not currently have someone in mind, but that is our role in doing that in collaboration with the high school principal, that we would We post internally first. We have some really qualified applicants who are already expressed interest in Coventry. But we always say it's a partnership, and the principal and whoever she wants to involve has final approval.
That's
So,
why I was just
Any
curious
other
about that.
questions?
Will,
Anybody else?
will this person be
Go ahead, Donna.
at the high school? So they'll be there full-time?
Yes.
If I
Yeah, go
may, yeah, I just wanted to know, how is your program going to fold into, because we have the Coventry Substance Abuse Task Force. So how is what you're doing kind of fold into what?
We work hand in hand. In fact, the director of the Kent County Regional Coalition, Kathy Sullivan, who oversees all the individual task forces in Kent County, works for RISAS. So she and I are, 2 doors away, and we closely collaborate. I know she's been in contact with Craig, and so it's a really good collaboration, and that's statewide. We work hand in hand with the municipal task forces as well as the regional coalitions. It really makes up the Rhode Island prevention infrastructure are the coalitions and student assistance. We're currently, as of the fall, would be in 54 middle and high schools. And we have been doing this since 1987. Craig mentioned the anticipated school match in, not next year, but the following year is about around 28,000. That's an estimate. That's far less than half the cost of the program, because you figure this is a master's degree level counselor, salary and benefits, so it's really a pretty good deal. The hope is that the funds would continue as it has for the past 30 years, where the state, through federal funds, picks up the difference between the actual cost and what the schools would pay.
So what kind of statistics are what's your success rate?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because the student assistance program model that we're implementing, Project Success, has been recognized. We based it on a national model. So the first thing is, this is a program that's been researched nationally for a long time and is recognized. It's on what's called the Pew MacArthur Evidence-Based Practice List. But more importantly, in Rhode Island, just hot off the press, this hasn't even been publicized, but I have been given permission to share with school committees, recent analysis of the Rhode Island Student Survey, the last one, URI analyzed the data and found that schools, that marijuana use was lower, and alcohol use and vaping lower in schools with a student assistance program than those without. So that's the most recent local data that actually matches the national data. So that's important, and we hope to keep that going.
So I have one more question. We have this for the high school. What about the middle school, where we know that vaping is really prevalent?
Well, there were 2 pieces of legislation that were introduced this year that would have funded expansion of the student assistance program. Currently, there are, assuming Coventry came in next year, there would be 10 high schools and 25 middle schools still without the program. 2 pieces of legislation which sailed through the Senate, passed the full Senate, but got hung up in the House. They were legislation that in one case raised DUI fines that would then go to expand student assistance and the community-based prevention work. So unfortunately, those didn't pass, but since they passed half the General Assembly, next year it'll come back. So we may turn to some of you for letters of support, because that's the way you would get it in the schools that don't have it.
We should be calling our
Absolutely,
state reps.
absolutely.
And just,
Well-
with the middle school and you mentioned, Mr. Murray, the Substance Abuse Task Force. So we work closely with Dana DeVarno, who's
Yep,
also part
yep.
of Kent County. Dana's met with, I don't know if it's a physical meeting. I know Mr. Lucian's here someplace. Oh, there you go, Joe. Okay, your golf cap on there. But we're going to talk about, we were talking about targeting 6th graders, because she did a program this year in Cranston that they modeled. And she did the 8th graders, but because of what you're saying, we figured that 8th grade's too late. So she's going to work with Mr. Lucian, and so we're not neglecting the middle school. We're working with, like I said, we work with the Kent County Prevention Coalition. So we'll have the Substance Abuse Task Force and some of their funds available to do some prevention work at the middle school. So,
Well, it's nice that you guys will be working together, and we'll still be able to have some interventions at the earlier levels while we're
Right.
also focusing,
Right.
at the high school, so maybe Dana can focus her efforts at the younger.
Right, and we've
Younger
done
ages.
programs where high school kids, particularly athletes, have been trained and gone down into the middle school and actually done presentations around substance use and other issues. We call it varsity athletes above substance use, and they take a pledge to be substance free. And that's something we'll be talking to the high school about. That's an option if high school wanted to participate, but that's a nice connection, high school students bringing it down to the middle school.
Sorry, one last question.
Yeah.
Don't believer. You mentioned the Rhode Island Student Survey. How is that different than the Rhode Island Youth Risk Behavior Survey? Like, I know they're probably both assessment surveys for the intervention strategy. I'm assuming the data you're referring to is based on the survey.
Right, the Rhode Island Student Survey, one of the, I don't know question by question the differences. The differences with the Rhode Island Student Survey, you can get specific local data. Youth Risk Behavior Survey is just for the state. I don't believe you get
Right.
that for
That was a
Coventry or
right.
any local community. So the Rhode Island Student Survey would be available, will produce data locally. And there is some opt-out, and Craig and the other people, the other superintendents you mentioned have looked at it very closely and had some concerns about it, but I think those have been resolved.
Yeah, and I'm not against it. I
Yeah.
believe if we want the data and we want to
Right.
acknowledge we have problems to solve,
You have to
you've
ask
gotta
the questions. Yeah,
right? So,
exactly.
I'm certainly not against it. I'm
Yeah,
just
sure.
so I understand what the differences are.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you since 1988. I used to work in the Division of Substance Abuse. The task
That's
program.
right.
Yes, I know
I
your
started in
work.
December of 1986,
That's
actually.
right, that's
Yeah.
correct. That's
Nice to
correct.
see you.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you as well, Ms.
Makes me
Dinklage.
feel old.
Well, we both have. I mean, it's been a long time since I worked with Dave Spencer and Kerry O'Neill. So, yes, I
So-
can attest to Ms. Dick. I can attest to Sarah's ferocity and her work ethic, and as a model of
Thank you.
community leadership. So we'd be pleased and proud.
Thank
I
you.
would be anyways.
Thank you.
Nice to see you after 30 years.
Thank you, Sarah. The real question is, do you recognize him? No, just kidding. Anyway, are we ready to move on this? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve contracting with Rhode Island Student Assistance for Student Assistance Counselor at Coventry High School for the 2019-2020 school year.
I second the motion.
Any other further questions from the committee for anyone? Any comments or concerns from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much. Moving on to number 8, which is the approval of the executive assistant to the superintendent and secretary of the school committee contract. Mr. Lowe's, did you
Yeah,
want to
I'm
speak to
just going
that?
to be brief. I just wanted to, Mrs. McDonald has come on board and been extremely supportive, extremely loyal, extremely confidential, very, involved in every aspect of the office. And it's been on a temporary basis. And I know we were going to go out, we had talked about going out and what's it called when you put something in the search? Thank you.
Search committee.
I'm tired, I apologize. But right now, I think where we're at, we've also talked about, I've had conversations about looking at our office and reorganizing. But, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and right now, I think the priority is just to keep moving where we're at. And so I met with Ms. McDonald, and we talked about, having, at least extending it for a year in official capacity. She has suspended her retirement, and that way it gives us time to really think about what the priorities are and moving forward. And we may continue this way, but I felt comfortable, again, with the security that we have and moving forward in this manner, and she agreed to it, and so I wanted to bring it forward to the committee hopefully for your approval.
So any questions from the committee? Are we ready to motion on this? Are we ready for motion?
I'm ready.
Okay,
Okay. Make a motion to approve the Coventry High School assistant principal contract for Anne Marie.
no, this is
Oh,
Donna's.
for Donna McDonald.
Donna's,
Okay.
this is Donna's.
Woo!
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like
yeah.
going in, having flashbacks of 1988. Okay,
Okay.
here we go.
Almost
Madam
there.
Chair, I'd like to approve the executive assistant to the superintendent and secretary to the school committee contract for Donna A. McDonald as presented / amended.
I
Are there-
second the motion.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? Anything from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0.
Sorry about that, Madam.
Yoo-hoo! I'm not sure we have to welcome you. You've been here. Yeah, come on over and do it. Yeah, sure. Why not? Come on. You deserve the honor.
Congratulations.
We all are. Thanks, Donna. Okay. Did anybody want to say anything from the public? I think we're cool. All right, moving on to 9, which is the approval of the CHS Assistant Principal Contract. Mr. Levis, would you like to speak to this before we
Sure.
motion this?
So first, I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Anne Marie Zaborski. It seems like you brought your team with you here tonight. So, and feel free after this appointment for you guys to leave. So we, Ms. Maycumber spearheaded the interview committee, and after the interviews for the candidates, she had contacted me and spoke extremely highly about Mrs. Zaborski in terms of all the reasons why she's the right fit. Her references were phenomenal. I spoke with the superintendent in Narragansett, so we couldn't have a better person for Coventry High School. And I don't know if you want to say anything, Ms. Maycumber. You don't have to, but you can.
Well, I agree. When we interviewed, we had quite a few applicants. She was hands down the absolute best one that we've had. She also, I feel like she has strengths in areas. She's going to fill certain gaps that we have, that we know that we have, and I think it's going to round out our team nicely. And we're really excited for her to start.
And, yeah,
Good choice.
and Anne Marie's coming to us with 4 years of assistant principal experience in an elementary school, but she has 18 years experience in a high school in social studies, also the social studies department head. So her experience in the high school and the administrative experience together, I think, makes her a perfect fit. So
Are we ready for a motion? Mr. Florio.
I make a motion to approve Coventry High School assistant principal contract for Anne Marie Zaborski as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any further comments or questions from the committee? Anything from the public? Didn't see anything. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations. You gotta come forward.
congratulations, welcome.
Before
see
you
you
leave,
too.
you have to introduce everybody that you brought. Congratulations. Thank you very much. All right. I don't know if you want to say anything before you introduce folks, but.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to work with the Coventry High School. I'm very excited about this opportunity. There is nothing that I have heard or read about that doesn't support the positive school culture that is at the high school, how people feel safe at the high school, and how kids feel cared for. I'm just so very excited about helping Coventry High School continue to grow. So I brought most of my family, my husband, Ed, my daughter-in-law, Hillary. She's married to my son, John, who's sitting behind, my daughter, Victoria, and my daughter-in-law, Tyler, and my son, Kevin. And my youngest son is deployed right now. He's a nuclear engineer for the U.S. Navy. But most of my family is actually in the military, and this is very unusual for them all to be very close in one state for a period of time. So it's very exciting. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. So before we move on, did the public want to, is there anybody that wanted to say anything? I know what, all the kids love their mother and all that good stuff, but outside of that, anything else from anyone? No? Congratulations. You can leave. We'll let you. Go have some ice cream or something. You're welcome. Welcome. Congratulations. Okay, moving on to number 10, which is the discussion and approval of our school building committee. Mr. Levis, did you want to?
Sure, I think I'm going to ask Sarah to come up too, but I don't know if we're going to, I mean, we definitely want to have a discussion. We need to submit something by August 15th, correct? So we have time, we don't have to vote on this tonight, because I know there's what RIDE requires, and there's also what the town charter requires. So what we're trying to do, or what we will do, is combine both of those so that we meet the RIDE requirements and meet the town's requirements. We don't, Mr. Wazika's been on vacation. We need to work with him in terms of the town council members. The other thing too is that we did ask Mr. Crossman, we've had other individuals in the past, but the town planner did say he'd be willing to be on the building committee, and he does have engineering, architectural experience in that category. Yes. So it's really, again, opening up the discussion, because I feel that, we should get the council. And I know they have to approve it, we have to approve it, but I don't see how we can approve it without having the council members on it. Even if it's a town charter, I think the committee still needs to, my belief would be, it would be appropriate for this committee to still approve it with everybody on it, so that, not just the RIDE requirements and then add the town's requirements. So Sarah had sent an email out to the committee, our school committee, and so these are the individuals that had indicated that that they would be on it. So again, if you have questions, you want to have any discussion, but our next step will be to go, I believe, through Mr. Wazika to the council.
Right, so, and thank you, Mr. Pearson, for bringing that up, because I think actually the last building committee that we brought forward wasn't in compliance with the town charter. It met the RIDE requirements, but not necessarily the town charter. So the only addition really is that it requires 2 school committee members, which is fine because we had 2 volunteer, and then the addition of 2 town council reps, and then it required, I believe, 5 members from the community. The designation on the left-hand side, so outside of the town council reps, that's what's required by RIDE. So, but I think, we should probably meet that threshold unless they say they have to be specifically Coventry residents, and then we'll have to go back and double count and see. I think there's several of us that
We
are
have
Coventry
5 on there.
residents that will make that work. Mr. Wazika was out this week, so he did say that he'll poll the council when he returns on Monday, and then hopefully we can bring that forward. But this does need to be submitted with a letter of intent by August 15th. So we are still working with Studio Jade, so they'll submit that on our behalf. We just kind of have to go through this protocol to get it approved and signed.
Any questions for Sarah or Superintendent?
I guess with regard to the member of the community, and no disrespect to Mr. Crossman, because I know he has fulfilled roles in planning department and other things. But have we tried to cast the net a little bit wider? I mean, it seems like we have the same players over and over on these committees, and it would be nice, we may have somebody in town who has RIDE experience or a little bit more in depth on the architectural building side. And I know Russ, and I know he's owned an engineering firm, but we may want to get a little more depth in another area. So I just ask that we maybe cast that net a little wider and at least look at other participants who may be interested.
So
from the
if you
Russ
have
side.
recommendations and you want to send them
Okay.
to me, I would absolutely be happy to reach out. Bill Finnegan had been on the committee before. I did reach out to him again and did not get a response.
He's
I
still busy
also-
with the
He's
police.
probably busy with
I
police,
also
yeah.
had a communication with Mr.
Not enough.
Asselone as well, and he said that he was traveling a lot, so would not commit to that. but I do agree that it's important to get players involved on this so that they're part of the process. So, and I want to be clear too, this is the building committee that will be responsible for voting on decisions. But as we go through this, we will be opening up those forums to more community members to have them part of the process. This is just the actual board for voting. But if you have recommendations, I would be more than happy to reach out to them.
Sure.
And there's nothing preventing us from having more people on the committee, keeping in mind that sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen makes it difficult to
I was
move
just going to
forward.
ask you.
But I don't think, we have to have at least this many of people. So I think if we have another member of the community that has expertise, then we would be remiss not to add them on.
Okay, I'll definitely,
I was going to ask you that, is because we have two, why wouldn't we have two members of the community also?
Right, and
Yeah.
there's nothing preventing that other than them willing to volunteer and
Right.
take the time to do that.
have we put out any, like, I know you've direct called a few people who are notable people in town, but we may have people who are not so notable. Have we put out any other sort of like notification requests for people? I mean, I'm willing to do it as a school committee member and put it out there on social media and go canvas. But is there anything on the school
So I-
administration side that we've done?
I think one thing though is that, and again, this is always I don't want this to become political, so I think social media, my concern would be, so we get 20 people, then how do we decide those? And, and maybe that's a good problem to have, but I feel that,
You go with the person with the most qualifications,
based on,
like,
though, but it-
like with anything else.
With
Well-
all due respect, the picks that we called are all somewhat political,
That's right.
right? Let's be honest.
Correct.
So I actually
That's
agree.
being more
I think
political
by
than anything.
basing it on qualifications and looking at the broader community, that somebody who just may come out of the woodwork who says, I'm an architect and I've done schoolwork and I've been, I think that's the least political of all because we're basing it solely on the qualifications of that participant.
It could
And that's what I
easily
would
be an added
prefer.
reminder.
I'm not saying that, the players you mentioned aren't qualified, but I think there may be someone out there that we're not tapping.
So given that we're not voting on this
Yeah,
tonight, we
doesn't
can
matter.
absolutely take that route. It's pretty broad as to the requirements, so we would have to establish some type of protocol then to determine the most qualified, because it's pretty broad with architectural, engineering,
Yeah.
construction. So, we can certainly do that. It's not like we have to adhere to any certain timeline where we have to do any sealed responses or anything like that. So if that's the direction the committee would like to go, then I would be more than happy to do that.
The council has a say in this too, right?
The council will ultimately vote on this and sign it. So, once we pick this committee, again, this isn't something that I haven't shared with Ed.
Right.
And obviously I asked him to be that representative from the town to fill that role. And he is requesting who will be on it from the town council. So, but yes, we will approve this and then this will have to go to town council to get approved to submit for August 15th.
I worked with Russ Crossman on the planning commission, and he was actually very knowledgeable. And he was chair of the planning commission. And there were two people who were absolutely knowledgeable about real estate and about what's happening in town. And he's one of them, and the other one is Rick Lullian, who is now the chair of the planning board, and he also works for the state of Rhode Island. And he's very knowledgeable, but I don't know if he has the time or not.
I don't think he has the time. I don't have the time.
Speaking
He
from
doesn't have the
peanut
time.
gallery.
I'm just saying.
I do think, I think it's well, the point
I
is
get
well
what you're
taken that there are probably some Coventry, I would like to see it a Coventry resident, only because I think they'd have a vested interest as opposed to someone being outside of our community. That's just me thinking. I don't know, if someone could change my mind on
Well, it
that.
says member of the community.
Oh, it does.
It
Oh,
does.
it does say
Yeah, it
member of.
And I-
So there are, I think there are, I mean, even Tom Heatherman has construction experience, engineering experience, whatever. There are probably a ton of people out there. I would have no problem with Russ. I wouldn't have a problem with any of the people that have been brought up. Whether or not there should be more of an outreach, we have the time, why not? I don't know
just wanna
anybody
be
else,
clear.
quite frankly,
I'm
but
not
someone
calling
might.
anybody out. I'm
Yeah,
not.
no, we know.
All I'm asking is very simply, let's cast the net
Yeah.
and see what we pick up. And if the same players come forward that always do, then so be it. We'll pick out of that lot. But
Jason might
we
even know
have the
something.
same people, and thankfully so step
he's up
up,
too.
but
Yeah.
I would like some new people. I mean, quite honestly, I think other people need to participate, and I think it wouldn't
It'd
be a
be
bad
great
thing.
if it was
so.
somebody that never got involved in anything, doesn't know anybody, and just says, hey, that sounds like something I could really, help out here. I've got this experience, that experience.
So we'll discuss a way to reach out next week. We'll send something out and find the best way to
And
communicate.
I'll reach out to my district and see what I can, hopefully I'll ask every school committee member maybe to send something out to the district, at least, I don't know, just ask. Say this is out there, and contact us if you're interested.
As a former member of the school building committee, I'd say you need to have a professional engineer on it, because with the PE, if you're dealing with millions of dollars, sometimes we had issues. The project went sideways a number of times, and it's good to have the PE. We actually had a good working relationship in the building committee in 2000. Paul Sprague would be a good person to network with as well, because Paul was the attorney, and he was good. He was good at that time. I don't know.
So I think that
I heard the side.
we'll make this. We'll come back. We'll come back with some
It was
names.
20 years ago. I know.
But I say just so you understand, the reason I went to Mr. Crossman again, I don't know the politics other than what comes in my face. But he's the interim planner, and I first met him when we were doing the Hopkins Hill sand dune that was there for 20 years that nobody did anything with, and he was working for the receiver. So just so you understand that, we tried to get,
It's not
So-
about that at
right.
all.
No, but I just want to make sure that for my end.
I would have said the
it's-
comment if you said anybody else in town. I would have, that I knew has been participating in local government for a long time. These people get burnt out. They kind of like, I'm not saying you wouldn't be willing, but I'm just trying to get some new
Yeah.
fresh blood in.
So
that's all.
we'll find a way. We'll come back at the next school committee meeting, which is on the 25th. And then we'll, at that time, hopefully we can vote on this.
Thanks.
Makes no difference.
Thank you.
No, I got more. I was waiting for everyone else.
Go ahead.
May I say something?
Sure.
Thank you. So, couple things on here concerned with, and I won't even address the member of the community, some of the names that were mentioned, because the names aren't on here, so it's not actually fair to mention any names
Okay.
of people without having a list of people to work with. Concerned, like, on our capital list right now, and we're going to need a building committee for a couple things, especially for our capital projects. So I'm thinking outside the box, not just new construction of a new building, which this potentially could be talking about, but also any large project that requires a building committee to be formed. If the high school is the focus, a little concerned that we don't have a representative from the high school on this list. I'm just going to put that out there. Second point is, when we talk about member of the community, some of the names that have been mentioned are actually public officials. I think that's, in my mind, why they're technically members of the community, because they live here, they're also intertwined with the governance of the town, and it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's a conflict, that's not the right word, but it may not be in the spirit of what we're looking for here. The other thing on this, I'm not even sure we have to vote on this. According to our bylaws, Kathy, you have the power to appoint all members of committees and subcommittees, except when it comes to except when it comes to members of the community, which the bylaws say you should consult with us as a committee. So hopefully we have some good names or name to work with when
Yeah.
this comes before us again. But again, I'm not sure we have to vote on it next time. It's something to.
It's nice to discuss it, though.
Sure. No, I absolutely love the
Yeah.
fact that we're talking about it and we're being
And
transparent.
I think
Yeah.
we brought, I believe last time we pulled a building committee together, we did vote on it. So that was, like I said, it's-
Yeah, and then
whatever
basically
you
we didn't
decide
do
is fine.
anything.
Pardon?
Yeah.
I said,
So
basically, we didn't do
nothing
anything.
happened.
But
Well, that's 'cause we didn't have the money, yeah.
honestly did not have time this time, so
That's okay.
that's why I didn't answer you, so.
Nope, that's fine. But just to clarify maybe, so all principals were invited to be on. We wanted somebody from elementary and secondary from a perspective to have that on there. While our current list for NEASC may be focused on the high school because we need to continue to meet that maintenance threshold, I don't know if it's safe to say that that is the focus, definitely. We're just getting going with this process. We've met with Studio Jade and their team once. Invitations will be coming out to a smaller group for 2 more meetings over the summer. Then we'll meet a third time with just admin. And then once that process is done, then we're going to start really opening it up in a more community forum. So every principal had the same opportunity to share their concerns. I can tell you that early childhood came up pretty heavily at that meeting. Career and tech at both middle school and high school came up. So I think this process, while we're looking at the high school, that might not be, at the end of the day, what our main focus becomes once this goes through, because they'll go around and look programmatically, they'll look at the condition of the facilities, they'll rank where they think their issues are. Some big decisions or small decisions may come up out of it. I've also talked with John and Ed at the town, and I said I really think that we'll meet with them regardless because the town finance component is huge, so we'll get them on board at a different level early on. But I also said I really think you should look at entertaining this at a town-wide perspective and look at all of our buildings. Does that building across the street make sense the way that we're using it now? Or should that be reviewed? So I'm actually hoping that we're going through this process because we have to in order to get that reimbursement. We should have whether we had to or not. But I think that I don't want to say that this is definitely focused just on the high school because I don't think that that's accurate. As far as some of the other members, and we don't have to do this now, but I would just be curious to see who you were questioning because while it's listed there is some guidance as to what capacity they should fill. So I can pick on me as an example. So we're not talking about any other names because it says local budget official or member of local finance. It could technically be me. You could, I guess, technically have it John or Nat. That would be up to the committee. I think if it's a school-related issue, I would want to be on there, so I'd be at those meetings anyways. But so I would just want to ask a little bit further so I have an understanding of who you're potentially concerned about on that list.
My concern was the list that's not on the piece of paper, all the names that have been dropped. We don't have a list before us. My only concern with the names on there again was wanting some representation from the high school.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay.
No other concerns.
I would like to just follow up to the committee, just to say that the last building committee that we actually did a lot of work, the bond one, where we did the roofs and the fields at the high school and all that. Every time something was pertinent for the committee had their regularly scheduled meetings, but they brought in experts from the different buildings. They brought in the different principals to talk about what their needs were. And so, because they're all open, they're all posted and they're open meetings, so people come to those. And if it wasn't something that they really needed to be at, some people didn't, as long as we had a quorum, basically, kind of thing. So I'm not really concerned too much about where we're at the end, because even the people who are on the committee are going to know we need input from that school, or we need input from this one or that one or whatever to bring that group together. So I think what I do know from my experience is that I was extremely grateful we had people who knew what they were doing as far as construction, because even though you have a construction team and you hire the person to oversee the project and all that, above and even beyond that, what they were able to squeeze out of that proposal to get things done because they were knowledgeable. Tommy Heatherman knowing all about HVAC and how much it really costs. Nobody could be snowed. And so that's my biggest concern, that whoever gets picked does, and that's why Bill Finnegan was so good as well, because he does this for a living. Right. And so he knew when someone was trying to pull the wool over his eyes. He was able to say, that's not how much that's going to cost. They literally, I don't even know if this community even know, at the time when that committee ended, we were very thankful, obviously, but how much work they put in above and beyond the main committee. There were those subcommittees that worked hours and hours and hours. So, but I do think that the regular kind of people that go on to a committee, unless that's your business and you know exactly how much it costs a square foot to put X up on a wall, then that's what you need. So whoever we get for the engineer or the construction person or whatever has to have that knowledge. You know, be in the field and know what they're doing, seriously. Because we saved a lot of, I mean, I don't think we would have finished that project and got that field even done without them carefully nitpicking every single square inch of that proposal. But that's it for me. Anyway, any other questions for Sarah? Are we good?
No.
I'm just next, so I'm not.
Okay, anything from the public before, on this topic before we move on? All right, I guess we're good then, so we can go to the update.
Can I just,
Oh,
before we
yes,
get,
I'm
just,
sorry. Yep.
just to clarify, and Mr. Pearson brought, like, we have that emergency, the $500,000 approval. Like, there's a lot of things, not to be using a little cliche, but there are a lot of irons in the fire. So, like, things at the high school are important, and we do have to do them. This process that we're doing with Studio Jade is looking at our entire school district. So I just want to say, there's a lot of, I can't, how many, 3 or 4 different documents that we had to fill. I say we for everything, but everybody else does the work. Sarah, Jason had to fill out so that we can continue to get, have access to those, that almost $500,000 emergency funds to continue to make some of the repairs. So there, I just want to be clear, there's a lot of things going on that we need to do. But this will allow us to continue with that work, but also the big picture is that we're using that $150,000 to look at our entire district.
Right.
You know, so that's, just wanted to clarify that, if it needed to be. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, budget updates, Sarah.
Right, so you have in your packet just an update of where we're at. So this will be a regular agenda item until we kind of get going and start the year, and then it'll go to a monthly basis. So RIDE did release their final state aid on 6/27. So it was about, I think about $15,000 higher than what we had, so
We'll take
nothing
it.
huge. Tuition for individuals, I did end up decreasing, so that is our preschool tuition. Really, based on our policy, we bill depending on their status. So looking at where I think we're gonna fall, I thought that it was best to reduce that. I did, however, increase career and tech based on the number of new applications. So I believe we have 16 new applications on file right now. I'm sorry, 15. Cell tower revenue decrease. This is a little bit of a sore spot for me. So in the FY19 budget, they're actually planning on reducing that as well, even though I do have documentation with the previous finance director indicating that I was budgeting the full amount that is generated off of the school cell towers before it just been somewhat of an arbitrary number. I have an email back saying, okay, good. And for whatever reason, that didn't flow through on their books. So it's about $24,000 short. So I don't believe that will be coming in the FY20 budget either. So luckily we did pick up some tuitions. And I will still continue to pursue that, especially for FY20. If FY19 it wasn't done, but I do have written documentation saying that that was done. So that was,
I don't understand if it's on school property.
well, that would be getting into a legal
I know.
view on that. So yes.
I won't say anymore.
No, but I think, you know, enough, I mean, we'll talk to Mr. Anderson about that and pursue. That's, there's, you know, there's a disagreement, I think, between the town solicitor and Mr. Anderson. So that's something that will, because it, you know, we both agree that if it's revenue generated, it's under the care, custody, control of the school department. And we're not even talking about going back in terms of
The years
what was
passed.
dumped into a general pot and spent, and we're talking about moving forward. So we will pursue that.
Right, and I'll continue to work with John, and
Right.
it wasn't like a confrontational,
Right.
it was more, I said I had budgeted the same as I had budgeted last year, and they had understood that that was what had been budgeted for years and years back. So somehow between that transition of town manager, finance director, that was missed. So we'll continue to work on it, and if it comes back, then we'll adjust it accordingly. So those are the big revenue items. Salaries will continue to update as we go along, but we did have more people who had said they were returning from leave now say that they're not returning. So that did allow us to bring back some people who we had laid off, so that dropped my unemployment. The last meeting, I had 15 people on unemployment. Altogether, right now, I have like 5.5 in some capacity. So some are reducing less, but when I total up all the bodies, so it might be more individuals that are collecting unemployment. We still have people that are laid off,
Right.
but they're not going to hit us from an unemployment perspective. So once we kind of went through that, we still have some positions that were not filled after job fair. So I have those at an estimated step 5. I know some have come in higher and some have come in lower. So again, we'll continue to update as those positions get filled. We're still monitoring the kindergarten to decide what we need to do there. Unemployment benefit decrease, that definitely helped. We also looked at the final severance payouts for all the people that are retired, and as well as the SRP sick fund payout. So I adjusted that. Let's see. And tuition expenditures, we did receive a couple more applications, so I updated those as well. At this point in time, I'm comfortable not making the recommendation to eliminate clubs further, but I can't say that that's definitely going to be the same stance that we take later on.
So
But
it was
it's
like
just gonna
quarter
be
to
something that
quarter
we're
or
gonna be
something
watching, so,
that I saw, yeah.
And some of the resignations that you had tonight even came in after I did this. So again, if we can fill those at lower positions, we'll be in a better situation.
Well, and I just want to add to that, even though we like the dean of students at the middle school and the supervisor assistants, those are things that we, this is very fluid, and I know that we have a budget and we work within the budget and we come back before the committee when we make some adjustments. But those are positions that if at some point numbers shift in our way, that we still want to bring back forward, because we didn't say that they were needed. And the reason we cut them is because they weren't bodies.
Right.
We didn't have them, but they weren't bodies. So I just want to reiterate, and there were other needs that we've had, and and I'll talk about it in my report in terms of what I'm going to present the next time. So I think this community and the school committee and everybody gets a understanding of what we've actually lost the last few years, and then things that we haven't moved forward on, so that people understand how this has impacted our educational system. So.
Right, and so all the other line item cuts that I had presented before still remain. That was really just salaries and benefits that we are going to kind of be on the table right now. But I think that that's important to note, is that it's not only what we've asked people to cut over the years, it's all the initiatives that we have not even been able to move forward on. And I think that that's the part that kind of gets missed a lot during the budget process is, yes, we're still operating, but we still have to move forward. So,
I agree. Okay, any questions for Sarah? Any questions from the public for Sarah? Otherwise, you're off the hot seat. All right, moving on to 12, which is the superintendent's report. Mr. Levis, you have the floor.
Sure, I just wanted to thank first, school safety. So we submitted a grant, say we again, but Mrs. Andrews has worked with Captain, I'll never get his last, Zavalowski, I apologize. Captain Pete, that's what I call him. But we believe we have a good opportunity to get funding from the state through the Department of Ed for the middle school. I know that's something that people have asked for. We've talked about that, and so we'll keep you posted of where that comes. I know the colonel is very supportive of that, and again, I think, looking at tonight with the Student Assistance Council, with this opportunity that, it's again, more resources we can provide to support our students, our staff, and our families. So I think that's important, and I'm very appreciative. And I mentioned just briefly, so on the 25th, I had reached out to our administrators and reached out to other staff to look at what's been cut the last few years. And I know some people can go back many, many years. But I think it's important for me to present in terms of, and I'll give you an example. Something that came to my attention the other night was about, the other day, about custodians and how we used to have, like, at night, there'd be a couple of custodians in the building, and the concern that people are alone in the building. And we don't have the resources to do anything about it, but if we needed, I could find a way to have like a supervisor custodian that floats around to check to make sure people are okay. Because if you're alone and something happens and we're not going to find out. And that's a concern, right? That's brought to my attention, a concern. There's no way I can make that materialize, but we'd have to look at cutting someplace to make that happen. But that's just an example of how just cutting personnel has created a situation that may be a safety situation. So I'm going to lay out, hopefully concisely in a clear manner, all the resources that have been cut that impact our educational system. And then, as Ms. Mandrelli said, also things that we've talked about have been put on the table. Maybe we've just talked about and haven't even moved forward because it's just so unrealistic. But I think the community needs to understand that, because it's more than just cutting the clubs and the activities, the sports that impact kids. And anybody, and I said this, I met with the PTA last night, anybody that's ever heard me speak, I say I support everything. Like, I've supported music. We put a strings program on. We've supported the drama. We've supported all the arts. We support the athletics. We put all the coaches on the payroll. And we've tried to keep, opportunities for every kid. Our strategic plan's very clear, all students. That means all students. So, but I think when I hear that, and I get it, a pushback for $40,000, and then individuals thinking, well, you've got to be able to find $40,000, but we spend every single day looking at the budget. And I say we because, usually it's many of us. Every single day we're focused. Sarah came back. I only talked to her for 2 minutes today, but came back and talking about some of the issues going on with healthcare. And I just want you to know that we do not have contingencies in our budget. And we've cut 10% here when we had to cut the $100,000. We've cut here and there. And it's on a wish and a prayer. We do not have any money if a student comes in and needs an out-of-district placement. We're going to have to find that someplace else. And it's a shell game. But I really need the community to understand, despite that, recently you've had some real positive news about the scores at the high school. We saw the AP scores. We saw our SAT scores. And we'll do a more comprehensive presentation where we have all the data. So again, that's something that we'll do at the next school committee meeting. And I just mentioned the student performance data. When we get that information back, when we get our RICAS, we'll come back forward, because I think that all the work that we've been doing, we've talked about MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. We talk about the targeted interventions that we have going on at every level. I think when we see the RICAS, we know the SAT and our AP scores that it's making a difference. And as many people say, is it always test scores? Are those the most important things when you're defining a kid? Heck no. But it's what we're evaluated on. We know that. That's what the public, and we're seeing that that's making a difference. I hope you're seeing tonight the SRO, the student assistance counselor, to support our teachers, to support our administrators. That's going to make a difference. The next item I put on was just about donations. That I've had conversation with different individuals. I think we had a conversation at our policy subcommittee meeting. I think Mr. Pearson, the last one, is that I'm going to put an agenda item on periodically so that we can publicly recognize donations. I think it's important to get it on the record. It's also important, unless something that's anonymous, then we'll acknowledge the anonymous donation. But I think it's a good way. I know a lot of communities do that. We decided we don't think we need a policy around that, but it's a way to bring it public and to recognize, what's given to us from community members or organizations. That's a big part of, what we do. And then the last one is just about adult education subcommittee that I'm going to pull together a subcommittee. I already have some members. I'm going to, as we talked about with the building committee, I'm going to reach out to the community looking for, people with different types of experience, because it's something that we know is important. We know it's important for a lot of reasons. One, it's opportunities for the community to engage, for us to engage the community. We know there's tiered ways of providing adult education. There's no cost groups, people that are interested in history or book studies or musical, coming together and doing like a guitar circle, that really there's no cost to it. We know that we have individuals that would like to present, like Mr. Chef Marcella, the high school said he could have a program where people learn to make bread or learn to make pasta, different types of homemade pasta and sauces, and they're one-time courses we could offer. And then we know we can offer certification type of programs long-term and support. And so we believe we could generate a revenue, but at least break even. But it's also a great opportunity to use our schools, after hours and engage the community in hopefully their interests. I've been told by many parents that unless your child's into, music or athletics, there's not a lot to do in Coventry, and after
I
hours.
think it's a great idea.
So,
I think it's
so
an
this is something we talked about pushing forward, and there'll be some cost to it. We'll have to revisit the whole, and I've spoken to Mr. Martin right now. He knows that we're going to be looking at, reposting that position in terms of the director, which is open to all of our employees. We're going to, want someone though that has, some administrative certification. So that's the last thing I want to talk about. That's something that we'll be pulling together before the school year starts. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of those.
Can I just clarify, so from a cost perspective, that's not gonna hit our general fund budget. We receive an adult education grant every year that, I don't think has been maximized to the extent that it could be. And we also do collect revenue from adult ed that has to be restricted for adult ed. So if you look at our financial statements, you'll see a special revenue fund for adult education. So there is money there and available that can only be reinvested into an adult education program. So I think we can do some strategic stuff with that to enhance some areas of, let's say, the high school, that's where we're gonna go with it, that will be beneficial to current students, but also expand that adult ed program. So while there will be costs, it's not gonna be an additional
Right.
impact on the existing budget that's
Right.
there now.
I think that's an important point because that was one concern I had. The other concern I honestly have, and I do think it's a valid effort, a worthy effort, is that we're stretched. To some extent, we're trying to find ourselves in the school system on how we move forward with the budget, with curriculum, with retooling and the whole bit. Is just I don't want to divert staff resources that we have, and as long as it's outside of that, but we have so much to focus internally on the core systems that we have to divert to another effort. While it's a worthy effort, I just, as you go through it and you present it, I would just encourage you to present it in such a, at least tell us how it's not going to impact the limited resources we have now. And that would be the only thing me looking forward. But I do think it's a worthy effort. And if we can make it work within those bounds, I would be in favor.
Yeah.
So.
And I think my bigger concern of it was that we're receiving a federal grant from it, and it's a reimbursable based grant, so it's not like we're collecting money that we're not spending from the feds. But if we continue to not spend that, I don't want the feds to pull it either, and then not have us have that opportunity going forward where this is that opportunity to get community members into the school and maybe assist them in their own personal career goals. But I agree that we have to make sure that our resources are primarily focused on our core initiatives.
And that's why I think Sarah does what she does. And because my whole thought about this is about community engagement. I've had people approach me all the time about, I'd like to be able to do this, I'd like to be able to do that. That's why when we talked about Oak Haven originally, one of the things we thought is, originally we could take that gym on and then open that up to the community because there's such a need for space in terms of, clubs and teams. But it became cost prohibitive when we were charged for something else. So, but to me, this is a great way. So Sarah will worry about the money and the resource part, and my role is to try to expand in community engagement. We hear that a lot. Why should I have to pay for this? Why do I need to pay for it? Education. My kids are out, and this is a way to engage many people, including seniors. I mean, in my hometown, they have seniors come in one night a week to use computers, and they have Chromebooks or whatever, and they come in and national, kids that need community service hours do it. There's a small stipend for some educators to be there, and the seniors come in, 20, 30 once a week, and they learn how to Skype with their loved ones, or, it's a goodwill, but it's a great resource. And when they went to pass a bond for a new high school,
seniors are
many
right there.
seniors voted for it. We
right.
passed 5,600 to 1,500. So goodwill, and I think we need that. We definitely need that. So again, I agree with everything you're saying about the resources, and we have great people that are talented. Not just in the classroom. We have many people in our staff that have so many talents that we can share. But again, it can't cost us money. Hopefully it generates revenue, but at least, you know, we're covering our expenses, because we know if we're using space at night, we have to think about how do we clean that space. But this should be able to fund different things. So that's, you know, it has to be a win-win. So that's our goal.
I just have a final comment too, that if we could somehow collaborate with our own town rec in some way and senior center, because I know they do offer those kinds of things. Because I get that newsletter and I read and I say,
Yeah.
oh, wow, I could go.
Right.
I'm not old enough yet, but, well, I am, but, you know, you wonder if there's some way we could collaborate with them.
So, and I think the focus though is adult education, it's usually you come out with something, it's not secondary
Right,
certification.
right.
So I just
That's
wanted to
right.
clarify.
But I don't think that's what's going to happen here, right?
Well, you know, some of that will happen. That's what Sarah's talking about with the money piece. What I'm talking about, but what I'm talking about, right.
Oh, I see. I didn't
But
know
there's
that.
also different tiers, different opportunity and activities that we can do. And
And the
we
big
work
thing is
closely, so,
getting-
you know, we work closely with the rec center, and we work closely with senior center and Department of Human Services. So we're definitely not going to duplicate activities, and we're definitely not going to try to take away from there. But I believe there's a way that we can create a really comprehensive program.
Lori, did you have something to add? You look like you were going to say something.
No.
All right.
All right. Any other questions, Jim, James?
I support the adult education program, but that's beside the point. And I've stated this before, where I grew up, you know, we had, and it wasn't funded by the local district. I'm not even sure it was funded, but it was private colleges would rent out high school space.
Right.
And they would have classes in evenings, you know, you go to night class at the local high school, and it's put on by this junior college, they would
Right.
call it, to get certification. So there's plenty of opportunity out there, I think, for unique partnerships, and we have to look at it just as that, as an opportunity
Right.
to create something valuable for the community. My question really goes back to the SRO. Are we filling out the grant application, or is the Colonel?
So it's a ride, so it's a joint effort, but it's because it's a ride, we have to be the
Okay.
individuals, so we submit it.
I know the Colonel has filled out some grant applications in the past.
We've done, well, there's COPS grant, different things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So they've done those, that's where they get the SRO funding, and we've supported them with information. Lori worked on that with them. We gave them a lot of data, but that was separate. That's when they got the sole funding. That was the one I think we talked about, where when Socket received X number of SROs, then they decided they didn't want them. And we thought that because we were second in terms of, we were told that, and say the Colonel, the Coventry Police Department was second in the running, but they wouldn't give them to Coventry. And that was the one where it's a 4-year, like I think they funded for 3 years, but the 4th year, the department has to take on. This is a little different. This was money through the legislature, through the budget, through RIDE to the schools. There's $1 million that they just came up with. It just came out a few days ago, and Sarah and Lori have been in conversation with the department, with RIDE, the fiscal office, correct? Yes, and so there was even opportunity to get additional, if we would need an additional, because a high school would qualify for 2, but there's not the funds available. Because this is the way this works, this is kind of matching. So it's not going to cost us any additional funds.
Yeah, we'll collect the revenue though, and then we'll pass it through to the police department, that has to come through us.
Right.
Follow-up question. And we probably talked about it, and I don't remember. Did we ever finish updating the MOU?
So good
Coventry
question.
Police
So we are, it's been a long process, but right now, Mr. Anderson, we have met, so the leadership on both sides and the attorneys had met. And then we drilled down to 2 or 3 pieces of language. They worked on it, kicked it back to Mr. Anderson. He and I met. He had a conference call with the Dave D'Agostino, the attorney for the municipal side. And it's back to Mr. Anderson. There's just a couple pieces. So what we did is we submitted the draft. You have to approve it. It's got to come back here. But for the grant, what we said explicitly was a draft. Mr. Anderson's going to hopefully finish this up the weekend. And on the 25th, and we need to get, the police department's approval of it. But on the 25th, my plan is to bring it back before you, so you'll approve it. And again, Mr. Anderson, hopefully he can come to that in case you have questions, but it's aligned to protect the schools and protect the police department and really draw that line as clearly as we can in terms of what is our responsibility in terms of discipline, what's the responsibility of the police. So that's where it stands right now, but to submit it, we put the draft on it, and again, the plan will definitely be to come back before you on the 25th with the final document for your approval.
And RIDE has submitted, as part of the application process, they give you a sample MOU, which I have shared with John so that he can share that with the town's attorney and look at some of the language specifically that RIDE is looking for to be sure that our MOU does in fact align to some of their requirements under this funding. So we've sent the assurances, the MOU, the budget, and the job description, full packet, I sent yesterday to RIDE. So they have everything that they need to approve us should that happen, and I'll let Craig know as soon as I get notified.
That's good news. I know the federal guidelines for the SRO MOUs
And that's what-
changed a ways back, so I want to make sure we're aligned with those.
We are aligned, and RIDE is too. It's the Department of Justice, dear colleague letter that they sent around, the SRO MOU. So we followed that. So we should be in good shape. It's just making sure that the agreement between the police and the schools, that we can, agree on the language and come before you in 2 weeks. So,
Anything else?
Thank you.
Anybody from the public for Mr. Levis? Okay, finally, citizens' comments. Are there any comments or questions from the citizens gathered? Yep.
So it's not Karen DeLone, 20 report. It's not
Did
a
you hear
question,
that?
it's
Oh.
more of a,
Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't
sorry.
even
Sorry.
hear. Yeah.
Home can,
Cool,
just so
sure,
the
yeah.
people at home can hear you.
Yeah.
better?
Yeah.
It's more of kind of a thought I had. I've got someone in the middle school, and I've seen several kind of piggybacks maybe a little bit off of the adult education, but more towards middle school, just getting into high school. A little late now, but maybe for next summer, utilizing the Career and Tech program, sort of a fun camp week or two. I've seen many parents asking, what can you do with a 13, 14-year-old son or daughter looking for something that they don't want the traditional camp, but looking for something fun? Maybe the Career and Tech could kind of give them an idea. Hey, how's the cooking program, or how is, well, whatever the school has to offer can give them an idea
Yeah.
of what programs the school has, and maybe what fields they would be interested in going into, while getting revenue in, whatever the cost could be. I don't know those
Yeah.
details. Just a thought.
it's a great
That's a
idea.
great idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, and just to let you know, a friend of mine, someone I work with, a coworker, his daughter is going to baking camp.
What kind of
And-
camp?
Baking.
Oh,
Yeah.
baking camp.
They said
And-
bacon.
Half
No,
days,
bacon.
half days are almost $300 for
Yes.
a half day, 9 to
And-
12.
And he comes in with all kinds of baked goods this week. Oh, my daughter made this, my daughter made that. So it could, and it is expensive to, those
Yeah.
camps.
That's a great idea.
No, it's a great
Put that-
recruitment tool.
Yeah.
And it also may be somewhat of a funding
Excellent idea.
generator, or at least another avenue to outreach
Yeah.
to those kids on the summer slides, so,
The summer's like
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I was
that's
waiting
great.
for, I did get an email about the committee, and I was waiting for something to come of that, and I didn't want too much time to go by, so I figured I'd bring it up.
Very great idea.
It's a great idea.
So thank you.
We'll make note to put that on for.
Put that on our, yeah, put that on our
Yeah.
our docket to do, think about.
Okay.
Anything else? Seeing none, is there a motion to schedule our next meeting?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the next meeting of the school committee be scheduled for Thursday, July 25th, 2019, at 7 p.m. at Coventry Town Hall.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries 5-0. And I have 8:19 as a closing. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at 8:19 p.m.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everyone, for your